Greetings, boys and girls. In today's video, we are going to talk about finding a rule. Okay, this is a lesson about patterns. So we can use an input or output table to show a pattern. And a pattern is called a function when one quantity depends on the other. So there may be an example where the number of chairs that can be used depends on the number of tables used. Okay? If we say something like, well, for every table there are 4 chairs, we would use that. And then you would write a rule to describe the relationship between the inputs and the outputs of a function. Okay, let's look at an example. We're finding a rule, okay, and then we're going to use a rule to write an expression. So I'm looking at this input and output table. So I start with 2, that's what I start with, and then once I do something to that 2, it becomes a 5. Then I take a 4, do something to that 4, and it becomes a 7. I look at a 6, I do something to that 6, and it becomes a 9. And then I take an 8, and it becomes an 11. Well, one thing I notice about all of those numbers is they're increasing, so I can think of that I'm adding something. And as I'm trying to think about how much I'm adding, it looks like to get from 2 to 5, I added 3. Okay? To get from 4 to 7, I add 3. To get from 6 to 9, I add 3. To get from 8 to 11, I add 3. Okay? So the output is 3 more than the input. Now I'm going to use the variables that they gave me at the top of this table. So my input is going to be represented by the letter B. Okay, that's what I'm putting in. So my output is going to be B plus 3. And what this simply is saying is whatever number that I'm going to put in, I'm going to simply add 3 to that, and that will give me my output. Okay, so if I put the number 10 in, well, my output would be 13. All right, let's look at section B. It says use the rule, and they give me the rule right here. The rule is simply telling me how the table is changing. So the rule is n divided by 2. N divided by 2. And the n is right up here in the in the input. So if I have 2 and I divide 2 by 2, I get 1. So my output was P. Then I have 4, and I'm dividing 4 by 2. Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2, so my output would be 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 would be 4. 10 divided by 2 would be 5. Now, several of you are probably looking at this, and you may see the pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Well, that pattern is working because the numbers in my input, they're also going in order. And those are multiples of 2, and they're all in order. Okay, let's look at another problem. For number 2, the rule is that the output is n minus 5. So I'm starting with the input of n, that's my letter, and I'm going to be taking 5 away each time. So I have a 10, and I take 5 away, and I'm left with 5. I move over, I have a 20, and I take 5 away. I'm left with 15. All right, I want you to do these next 2 boxes, and we'll check and see if we get the same answers. All right, hopefully when you had 30 and you took 5 away, you had 25 left over. And then when you had 40 and you took 5 away, you got 35. Now for 3, they completed the input-output table, but we have to determine what is the rule. Now remember, when I think of my rule, I'm going to use my variable, which in this case is a y. So something's going to happen to my y. So in the first one, I started with a 1 and I ended with 5. So my number got bigger. The second one, I started with a 2 and I ended with a 6. My number got bigger again. The third one, I started with a 3 and I ended with a 7. My numbers keep increasing. And for the last one, I started with a 4 and I ended with an 8. So I'm thinking, if my numbers are increasing, I'm either going to add or I'm going to multiply. So let's see what happens if I add. 1 plus something equals 5. 2 plus something equals 6. 3 plus something equals 7. 4 plus something equals 8. So let's see, 1 plus 4 would be 5, 2 plus 4 would be 6, 3 plus 4 would be 7, and then 4 plus 4 would be 8. So it looks like, in this instance, I simply took the y and I added 4 to it. Now the fact that I have proof, 1, 2, 3, 4 situations, I was able to add 4, that tells me that that is actually the rule. The rule is y plus 4. Okay? Let's look at number 4. Our numbers are increasing again. I go from 1 to 2. Then I had 2 and that turned to 4. 3, they did something to it and it turned into a 6. Then they had 4 and they did something to it and turned it to an 8. So let's see, since this is an increasing rule again, I know that something's going to happen to b because that's my input variable. Let's see if I add, if I'll still get the number I'm supposed to get. 1 plus something equals 2. 2 plus something equals 4. 3 plus something equals 6. 4 plus something equals 8. All right, 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 3 plus 3 equals 6. 4 plus 4 equals 8. I don't know how to say b doubled. I can't say b plus something is the double, but I know that this is the same thing. Since my numbers were doubled, that is just like multiplying by 2. So my rule would actually be b times 2. So let's imagine 1 times 2 equals 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. 3 times 2 equals 6. 4 times 2 equals 8. So look, my pattern is in fact multiply by 2. B times 2. I hope that made sense. Alright, let's move on to the next one. If you need time, please pause this video. In this next problem, we have a word problem, but I still see we're given an input and output table. Tanya is waiting in line at a skate park. There are 4 people in front of her. The input-output table shows the relationship between the number of people in line and the length of time she will wait. What could be the rule, be a rule for the input-output table? All right, remember, in an input-output table, we always start with the input. So we have a 1. So we have a 1, they did something to it, and it turned into a 4. We have a 2, they did something to it, and it turned into an 8. We have a 3, they did something to it, and it turned into a 12. And then a 4, they did something to that, and it turned into 16. So if I'm thinking about the options, it's saying either p plus 3, so I'd add 3 to this. 1 plus 3 equals 4, that's good. Let's see what happens if I add 2 plus 3. Do I get 8? Nope. That would actually be a 5. And then 3 plus 3 is not 12. That would be a 6. And then 4 plus 3 would not be 16. Ooh. 4 plus 3 would actually be 7. So that tells me that this answer choice is not correct. Because look, it would change several of the numbers I already have written. Let's look at answer choice B. B says that the output is P times 4. So let's imagine multiplying by 4. 1 times 4 equals 4. 2 times 4 equals 8. 3 times 4, that also equals 12. 4 times 4 equals 16. So this one looks really good. Answer choice B. Let's look at C, answer choice C. C is saying that the output is taking the variable for the output, which is t, and subtracting 3. Well, we're never going to determine the output by looking at the output. We determine the output by looking at the input, which is the letter P. So this one doesn't work because it is talking about the letter T. Okay, and then lastly, we're looking at answer choice D. If I multiplied 1 times 2, I would get 2, which is not 4. If I multiplied 2 times 2, I'd get 4, which is not 8. So this one is not working. We already have several that it didn't work for. So our correct answer choice would be B. All right. I want you to see if you can figure this one out looking at the information they gave you. Make sure you look. How are things changing with the first term? You go from 12 down to 5. The third term, you go from 16 down to 9. In the fourth term, you go from 18 down to 11. Okay, and they told you n minus 7, so hopefully you took that 14 and you subtracted 7, not added it. You subtracted 7 and you would have gotten 7 as your answer. Okay? Hopefully that made sense. Let's look at the next one. Ooh, we have a multi-step problem. Okay, in a photo album, 1 page holds 4 photographs. 2 pages hold 8 photographs. 3 pages hold 12 photographs. 4 pages hold 16 photographs. How many photographs do 5 pages hold? Okay, now I'm going to fill in this information because they told me the number of pages and the number of photographs. So they told me 1 page holds 4. 2 pages hold 8. 3 pages hold 12. And 4 pages hold 16. Now I'm thinking to myself, how are these numbers changing? What am I doing to the number of pages to determine the number of photographs? Well, this looks like a problem that we did earlier, and I can tell that to get from 1 to 4, I could either add or I could multiply. But looking at 4, 8, 12, 16, I realize those are multiples of 4, so my rule is A times 4. But look at what they're asking me. How many photographs will 5 pages hold? So I'm thinking about if there was another column here, I'd have 5 pages, and I would simply take 5 times 4, which equals 20. 20 would go down here, and that's how many photographs that 5 pages would hold. Okay, I hope that made sense. We have one more problem to look at. And this time, I want you to do it on your own. I hope this video was helpful. And until we meet again in class, see you all later. Bye.